Welcome to the 700 Club. Drama on Capitol Hill yesterday over Afghanistan. Remember when President Biden told the American people, quote, his generals did not recommend keeping troops in Afghanistan? Well, the generals say they did. They testified to Congress that they wanted to keep at least 2,500 troops, even after the deadline for withdrawal. So what did the administration say to that? Charlene Aaron has that.
The nation's leading generals faced tough questioning by lawmakers on Capitol Hill Tuesday, saying they believed U.S. forces should remain in Afghanistan and implying they communicated that advice to the president. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff testifying that he believed it necessary to maintain U.S. troop presence ahead of the withdrawal, offering a differing account from President Biden's statements.
My assessment was back in the fall of 20, and it remained consistent throughout, that we should keep a steady state of 2,500, and it could bounce up to 3,500, maybe something like that, in order to move toward a negotiated, gated solution.
Did you ever present that assessment personally to President Biden?
I don't discuss exactly what my conversations are with the sitting president in the Oval Office, but I can tell you what my personal opinion was, and I'm always candid.
General Frank McKenzie saying he had warned what would happen if we didn't leave 2,500 troops behind.
And my view is that 2,500 was an appropriate number to remain, and that if we went below that number, in fact, we would probably witness a collapse of the Afghan government and the Afghan military. So,
General McKenzie, may I just, I guess my question is, would it be fair for the committee to assume that both President Trump and President Biden received that specific information?
I believe it would be reasonable for the committee to assume that.
That contradicts President Biden's statements in an interview with ABC News last month.
Your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that.
No, no one said that to me that I can recall.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki pushed back against suggestions that the president misled the public on recommendations from his military advisors.
The president made clear that the advice was split. He didn't outline what every individual conveyed to him in private advice.
Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution weighed in on the issue on CBN's Faith Nation.
The central reality is we didn't have to lose Afghanistan in the first place. We didn't have to decide to leave in April. And Mr. Biden's team did not recommend that we depart when he made that decision back in the spring.
General Milley was also questioned about his calls with his counterpart in China during the final months of the Trump presidency in an effort to reassure China that President Trump and the U.S. were not planning any kind of attack.
I am certain that President Trump did not intend to attack the Chinese. And it is my directed responsibility, and it was my directed responsibility by the Secretary, to convey that intent to the Chinese.
He also said he reassured Speaker Nancy Pelosi that the president could not launch an attack on his own and went over protocols with his staff.
At no time was I attempting to change or influence the process, usurp authority, or insert myself in the chain of command.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
General Milley also said that he was not acting alone, but that the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State Pompeo were aware of his communication with the Chinese.
Charlene, the whole thing about Milley, there was a book out that he really was going rogue, and did they nail him on that in that series of questions?
They did ask him several times, why didn't you resign if you felt that your communication was not being received by the president? And he really stood by what he said, that he felt that he was acting on the behalf of the best of what the president was telling him at that time, and that he was doing the right thing, and that he was not acting alone, but that the Defense Secretary and Secretary of State Pompeo were aware that he was communicating with the Chinese.
Thanks, Charlene. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now for some good news. We appear to be turning the corner. They've used that term many times, but we may be having a decay. Let's go to CBN medical correspondent Laurie Johnson for this update.
Pat, the good news is case numbers are down about 25% from where they were 2 weeks ago. So that's a nice decline in the number of people testing positive for COVID-19. Also, Pat, Pfizer is announcing its vaccine for kids ages 5 through 11 is safe, and that company has submitted the data to the FDA for review. Meanwhile, those 65 and over, or those with high risk from COVID, are lining up for the booster shot. More than 400,000 so far, with 1 million more scheduled. There is also some good news, as it appears we're turning the corner from the Delta surge. While deaths are still very high, more than 27,000 in the last 2 weeks, hospitalizations have dropped more than 20% since the beginning of this month. Vaccine mandates are having an impact on healthcare workers, as a significant number are either quitting their jobs or being let go rather than comply.
You need to be assured that the person taking care of you is not going to give COVID to you.
Well, I don't consider myself a super spreader. I would stay home, of course, if I were sick. I think it should be a choice.
39 resigning from a health system in Kansas City, and Novant Health in North Carolina firing 175 for refusing to get the vaccine. However, in New York City, vaccination rates among healthcare workers jumped to 94% because of a vaccination mandate there, Pat.
Lori, if somebody has the COVID, had it, then they have antibodies, and their immunity is really superior to having a shot. But yet we're mandating that every worker has got to have a booster shot regardless of their condition. Am I correct in that?
You are correct in that, and that is one of the main controversies, is why are people who have natural immunity being forced or mandated to get vaccines? And there are some lawsuits already being filed in anticipation of President Biden's vaccine mandate for companies that have over 100 employees, and there is a lot of pushback for the vaccine mandates that have already taken place in private businesses and private healthcare systems and school districts, like people saying, why, if I've already recovered from COVID-19, do I need the vaccine? But usually they're not taking natural immunity into consideration.
Well, I understand the healthcare system is getting hollowed out because so many of these nurses are actually quitting their job rather than have this other vaccination. And it's critical. I mean, a whole lot of emergency rooms are shutting down because they don't have enough nurses. Am I right there?
You are correct in that. And in New York State, for example, the governor has the National Guard standing by to fill in for some of these healthcare workers, National Guards members who are trained in medicine, standing by, although they're not needed at this point. But there are some warnings that some sort of surgical procedures that are not critical, that may be put on hold for a while, and there may be shortages. We're not seeing that at a large extent at this point, but there are warnings that might happen. A lot of healthcare systems, even the ones here, Pat, are mandating vaccines.
What is the effect of the boosters? Do you have any, if they have Moderna, can they get Pfizer and so forth?
Great question. So the answer to that is basically no. Right now, boosters have only been approved for Pfizer. So if you had Pfizer, then you're the only one who really should get a booster. So what about J&J and people who had Moderna? That data is being considered, and there should be an announcement about that within the next couple of weeks. So if you got a J&J, I know you're a J&J person, Pat, or Moderna, just sit tight, and there should be some sort of a recommendation within the next couple of weeks.
Well, thanks, Lori. I have no intention of getting any more. I got the J&J one time. It was just fine. Everything's good. Well,
not a big fan of the needles, huh?
Well, also in the news, Democrats are in a panic. The Supreme Court's new term starts in a few days, and they fear the strong conservative majority could overturn that case of Roe versus Wade. Well, in a preemptive strike, the House passed a drastic bill protecting abortion up to the moment of birth. Shocking. Here's Jenna Barlow.
The Democrat-led House passed the bill which allows abortion up until the moment of birth with just 7 votes to spare.
The bill is passed without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Only one Democrat voted against the Women's Health Protection Act. The legislation protects abortion nationwide and also ensures providers are permitted to perform them.
It has been declared constitutional by the Supreme Court. We wish they would just honor their own precedent on this, but they didn't.
Democrats passing the bill over concerns the conservative-leaning Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade. If the bill becomes law, it would override many pro-life measures put in place by states, allowing abortion up until the moment of birth, nullifying women's right to know laws and parental involvement statutes.
This is the most extreme congressional bill ever.
Congressman Chris Smith, a fierce opponent of the bill on CBN's Faith Nation.
And the new bill that just passed, as you know, on Friday, is right up until birth, unfettered access to abortion, and all of the state laws, like women's right to know, parental consent, waiting periods, even laws against pain-capable unborn children to protect them. There's several of those laws. All of them would be eviscerated, would be overturned overnight.
The bill now heads to the Senate, where it faces a steep uphill battle. Because of the filibuster rule, it needs 60 votes to pass there. Split 50-50, not even all Democrats are on board, much less the 10 Republicans they would need. And another big showdown over the issue of abortion will come on December 1st. That's when the Supreme Court will hear a Mississippi case that could overturn Roe v. Wade. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Folks, in the old days, there used to be something called forum shopping. Plaintiff would shop a forum where he knew there'd be a judge that would be favorable to him. The whole case of Roe versus Wade was a put-up job by the ACLU, and it was a phony case to begin with. When it went to the Supreme Court, it was called Blackmun's abortion because it was so poorly decided. And Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton were two cases that should have been overturned. Well, right now, there are enough conservatives in the Supreme Court, in my opinion, to say we wrongly decided Roe versus Wade. It was based on bad science, and we therefore will declare it null and void. The Supreme Court can do that, and therefore throw these other cases back to the states for consideration. But that should never have been federalized. Abortion should always have been left to the state police power. Once it was federalized, it took it out of the hands of the voters, and it has led to nothing but hatred and confusion ever since. And Roe versus Wade should be overturned, and it's time to do it. And let's hope the Supreme Court will step up to the plate and get the job done as they should have way, way back when we were talking about penumbras and all that nonsense that went on with that Griswold case in Connecticut.